Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne and you are watching Postcards from Our Golden Years. I'm so happy to see you today.
I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on. I put my feet up and we just sing along. And I can't help but feeling, just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving.
So if you are paying attention to our channel, you know that last week I presented a video talking about how cheaply you can live in the south of France, the Côte d'Azur, Nice, beautiful Nice. How cheaply you can live here compared to living in the United States. And Jeff and I, my husband, and I came from one of the most expensive places in Florida to live, Naples, Florida. So frankly, it wasn't all that hard to find a place less expensive to live. The two of us are living 100% on our U.S. Social Security benefits. Now, you could say, oh, that's impossible. Well, in all fairness, if you're collecting enough Social Security benefits, you absolutely can live in the south of France, and you can live pretty much as comfortably as you did in the United States. Now, are we living in a 3-bedroom house with a 2-car garage on a canal? No, but we don't need that kind of space. So when we made the decision to retire to the south of France, we created a list of what our priorities were. And for us, a cozy apartment, 2-bedroom, 1 bath was enough. And that's what we have. And you can look at our past videos and you can see a tour of our apartment. You can see the before, you can see the after. And in the near future, we'll even do another video showing some updates to our apartment that we've been working on in the months following. So today, I am going to answer some of the other questions that people have been asking us for pretty much most of the year plus that we've been living here. So, little tips and things. So, one of the first things people asked us about was, how did you get your stuff to France? How did you decide what to bring and what not to bring? Well, like most people, when we made the decision that we wanted to move to France, I started doing lots of research online, started typing in, how to move to France? What should we bring? And of course, the consensus was, just sell everything and start out fresh. It's just stuff, and it costs so much money to move it. Well, it's easy to say sell everything, but the reality is when it comes time to pack, you're not going to want to sell everything. And that's the way it was with us. So if you've been following my channel, or our channel, for a long time, then you may remember well over a year ago, because we have been living here in France for over a year, and well over a year ago, I did a video where I was talking about one of the first closet clean-outs that I did back then, and I had over 200 pairs of shoes spread all over my bedroom floor back in Florida. And I had promised my husband I was going to whittle it down to 12 pairs of shoes. I can laugh now. Actually, I laughed then too, because in my heart, I knew that was never going to happen. Anyway, I managed to get it down to 50 pairs of shoes. And the reality is that as we started packing, we started thinking about what things we wanted, truly wanted to spend the rest of our lives without. And so, of course, we did all of the normal stuff. We sold just about every single piece of furniture that was in our house. We had a 3-bedroom house. One of the bedrooms was used as an in-home office for Jeff. We sold all of the office furniture. We sold he had a big giant printer. We sold that. Actually, no, we donated that because we couldn't get anybody to buy it. But we sold everything else. I sold our dining room set a year before we moved, thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to take a long time to sell this, so I'm going to start a year ahead. And it sold within days. And so for the last year that we lived in Florida, we had no dining room set. We had to bring our patio table in and eat on our little square patio table. Anyway, so we sold all of the furniture except for one piece of furniture. I have a lingerie chest, and it's not a huge chest, but when it was in the United States, I kept jewelry in it, and it had lots of little drawers, and I kept costume jewelry in most of those drawers. And in one drawer, there was just a bunch of extra surplus makeup and stuff. And the top part was all these little drawers where I kept my fine jewelry. So when I was thinking ahead to moving to France, I thought, there's not a lot of closet space where we're going, and there isn't a lot of furniture. We were renting a furnished apartment, and I thought if I could just bring this one piece of furniture. Now, I sold most of my costume jewelry, and I still have, the fine jewelry, the expensive stuff. And I thought, if I could bring this one piece of furniture, I could use the bottom, all of the drawers for lingerie, and I could use the top part for the good jewelry. And so that's what we decided to do. And in addition, we had this really large poster. Now it's a vintage poster that has traveled with me throughout most of my adult life, starting with my office when I worked in Philadelphia. It was in my office. Somebody had left it to me when they left the company I was with, and they gave me that picture, and I moved it to my home, to my dining room, and it has graced every single dining room ever since. That was back in the mid-90s. Anyway, so that picture, that comes with me. So of course that was going to move. So now we had a mover picked out, and we had estimated, as I said, 20 to 30 boxes. And then what we did was, I decided I'm going to start packing 6 months ahead. So we went to our local U-Haul store, and we bought 30 medium-sized boxes. So they're not real huge, they're not real small, they're medium-sized. And we picked those boxes because I wanted boxes that Jeff could easily carry in case we could only get a mover to drop the stuff outside the door of our building. Or if for some reason he just had to move boxes around, we didn't want the boxes to be too big or too heavy. But the most important reason that we picked the medium-sized boxes was that we figured they would all fit in the typical very tiny French elevators. Here in France, at least here in Nice, they don't have freight elevators like they do in the apartment buildings in the US. So we knew that we were going to have to rely on the people elevators, and we needed boxes that would not only fit in the elevators, but that could be stacked. We didn't want to have our movers having to carry huge, heavy boxes up the steps if the day they arrived, for some reason, the elevator wasn't working. So over the months, I started filling our medium-sized boxes, and because I wasn't paying attention, I was thinking, I'll pack them light, that way if Jeff has to pick them up, they won't be too heavy. So at this point, this is when I'm starting to decide what to bring. And I started looking around thinking, of course, I was going to bring my shoes. and I was going to bring my clothes, the ones that I had narrowed it down to. And I had multiple closet clean outs. In fact, I did videos well over a year ago, maybe we're getting a year and a half, 2 years ago. As every time I did another closet clean out, I did another video. And so we went from, a gigantic wardrobe that took up one huge master bedroom walk-in closet and all of a guest room closet. And I narrowed it down to literally one side of my walk-in closet. That was a huge accomplishment. So of course I packed the clothes, except for the things that we were using day to day, because again, I was packing ahead. Then we got into the dining room and I started looking at things that were in boxes because we had sold the dining room set, but I had all of the stuff in boxes on the floor in the dining room. And I started thinking, okay, there's all this crystal. I had a set of crystal glasses that I actually got as a wedding present when I got married the time before Jeff, so with the last husband. And when he and I divorced, we split those crystal glasses. And so when Jeff and I got together, there were only 6 glasses. And so he went out and as a surprise, he bought me the other 6 glasses. So now we had a dozen of these really pretty glasses that I really liked. And I really hated to get rid of them. I had a bunch of other crystal and I had been trying to sell it, but people just didn't want to buy it. Nobody cared about crystal. Young people, they just didn't want to buy crystal. So I ended up donating a lot of the crystal, but the one set that I had brought from the other marriage and that Jeff had added to, we did pack that, brought that. Because it is expensive to repurchase crystal here in France. And I didn't want to have to come here and first go out and buy crystal. When I got it originally, it was a wedding present. And so I didn't pay for it then. I didn't want to have to go out and spend the money just to make sure I had good crystal. The next thing was in the kitchen. I looked at the pots, and I had some really good all-clad and Calphalon pots. And I started thinking, wow, it's really expensive to repurchase these pots in France, or whatever the brand is in France. And I really want good pots. I didn't want to buy a bunch of junk. I didn't want to come to France and sort of live like we were camping with, Walmart grade pots and pans. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And I was accustomed to cooking on really good cookware. And so I looked at these things and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to bring them. Again, I don't want to go spend the money to replace Calphalon and all clad with the same thing in France or whatever the hot luxury cookware is there. So I got a box and I threw the pots in there. And to keep them from rustling all around, by the time I packed the pots, we were getting towards the end of the packing. To keep them from moving around, I was running low on bubble wrap. And so I took a lot of coats from the coat closet that we still hadn't packed, and I surrounded the pots and pans with coats, and I think there were some towels that were thrown in there just to sort of cushion everything so they weren't banging around in the box. So we did bring that. And then I looked at a set of flatware that my mother had given me. My mother, unfortunately, is not with us anymore. And many years ago, when I had moved her from her 55-plus condo into assisted living, she, of course, had to reduce her stuff. And she asked me if I would like this set of sterling. Well, it's not sterling. It looks like silver, and it tarnishes like silver. So, it looks like fancy stuff. And for all the years when I was growing up, whenever we had company, and my mom and dad used to entertain a lot, whenever we had company, she would put out this really good silverware. And for all these years that she was living alone in her 55-plus community condo, she wasn't using it, and then she gave it to me. And I held on to that. Well, right until we moved to France. And I was looking at it, it was still in the box that it was kept in. And I thought, you know, I think I'd like to use this as our everyday flatware here in France. And so I put it at the bottom of a box. It was very heavy, and it came with us. And it's in the kitchen. That's what we use as our everyday silverware. So it's, at this point, it's probably an antique because my mom and dad got it as a wedding present when they got married in, I think, 1950. So that silverware is, what, 75 years old today. So, and every time I use it, you know, I touch it and I think back, this is stuff that I grew up with, and it's still in excellent condition. So I didn't want to part with that. I just couldn't. I couldn't donate it. And I had another set of silverware that belonged to my stepdad that my mother also gave me, and I was never going to use it. It didn't have the same sentimental value that my mom's silverware had. And I tried to sell my stepdad's silverware, and I pretty much had to almost give it away. Nobody really wanted to buy it. So, and then I had this wonderful set of French Limoges china. Now, in this particular situation, Jeff had gotten it for me as a Christmas gift, and he bought it for me at a thrift store. And so he didn't pay an extravagant amount of money for it. But I thought, you know, it's French, it's Limoges. Now that's something I can just rebuy in France. So I tried to sell it. That was another thing. It was almost impossible to sell that set of dishes, and it was serviced for, I think it was 12. And it even had a few of the serving pieces with it. In the end, I had to sell it for less than we bought it for, which really broke my heart, but at least I got something for it. And when I got here, I have not replaced it. So, you know, I'm sorry I had to let it go because I kept it for years thinking if I ever move to France, this is what I'll use. And it was a very pretty set. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll get another set of beautiful Limoges china. I know there's a Limoges outlet here in France, and maybe someday Jeff and I will do a little weekend getaway and I'll go see if I can find something that's just as sweet as that was. But for now, I don't have it. I didn't pack it. And as I said, I did sell it. It killed me when I had to sell my big KitchenAid mixer that I had had for my entire adult life. I think my first husband, and I've been married 3 times, I think my first husband bought that for me as a present one year for Christmas, and I carried it with me through every marriage. So probably, well, a long time. Anyway, I did sell that, and that I had no problem selling because everybody loves KitchenAid mixers. And if they could buy one for less than what it sold for in the store, and mine was in excellent condition, and I had a bunch of the attachments, the meat grinder, the juicer, I threw all of those things in, so I was able to sell that fast. But for the most part, I either donated or sold everything else in the kitchen, with some exceptions. I mean, I had some favorite bowls. There was one that was made in Italy that was great pasta bowl, and another one that I used to do big tossed salads in, also made in Italy, and this little set of lunch dishes that I really loved, and I just didn't want to part with it. And I started thinking, you know, I don't have to sell everything. If I really have some things that I just don't want to live without, I'm just going to bring them. And so I wrapped everything nicely in bubble wrap. I had a few crystal vases that I had gotten as wedding presents over the years. I didn't want to sell them either. I didn't want to sell anything that was going to cost a lot of money to rebuy that was still very nice. Because again, we didn't want to live like we were struggling here. Some other things that we chose to bring with us were little treasures that we had purchased on our vacations all over the world. We had gone to Murano Glass outside of Venice one year, and we bought a sangria pitcher and glasses and a nut bowl. It was a pretty set, and we also bought a Murano Glass sculpture, and we didn't want to part with these things. Anything that touched our heart was something that came with us, and we had little mementos of things that we had picked up along the way. I had a little bottle with sand from the Sahara Desert from a trip that we made to Morocco years ago. Well, you know that was coming with us. The first little globe that I bought on my very first trip to Paris with the Eiffel Tower in it, I know I could buy another one here, but it wouldn't be the same one that I got on that very first trip to France in the mid-90s. So that had to come with me too. We do like entertaining. We don't do it as often as we might want to yet. But I'd like to be able to entertain and have nice things and not have to go buy them. So we brought those things with us. And so in the end, by the time we got done packing everything that we just couldn't live without, we ended up with 62 medium U-Haul boxes, which again are not gigantic. And they were just small enough to fit in the elevator here in our building. So 62 boxes. And we had used a company called International Movers Network. Now, it sounds like it's a lot of different movers put together, but it's really just one company, and their offices are in New York. However, I went online and I just requested a quote to move our 20, what I thought was at the time I asked for the quote, 20 to 30 boxes, and they gave me a quote. And I ended up going with this particular company because they told me that they shipped everything through Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And they said they did that because customs here in France is not always the easiest to get through and not always the fastest. And they said that they had a better time going through customs in Rotterdam than they did in France. So that was fine with us. And the way they worked was they told us how to label the boxes. And basically they said all of the boxes should be labeled in black marker, big black marker, and the word used should be the first thing on every box. So it would be used women's shoes, used women's sweaters, used men's sweaters, used housewares, used books, used glasses, used. This is because if it's used, you don't have to pay, for the most part, customs duties or fees. Now, a lot of people worry about, oh my gosh, I have to take an inventory of everything I'm moving. Well, no, we did not have to do that. That would have been horrendous. What we did with this mover was we just marked the boxes. We could get as specific as we wanted to on the outside of the boxes, but we didn't have to count how many things were in each box. So the inventory didn't say, 27 sweaters, 6 pairs of jeans, 4 pairs of panties. It didn't say any of that. So when the mover came to pick up our boxes, one of the guys had a clipboard with a paper numbered, 1 to 50 on each page or something like that. And as they were moving all of the boxes, he was writing down the description of what I had in each box. And so he was creating the inventory for us of what we were shipping to France. And so then they took all of the boxes in the truck and they drove away and took them to the port of Miami. Because remember, we were in Florida. We were in Naples, Florida on the West Coast. So they drove them to the port of Miami, and we thought everything was going to ship from the port of Miami. Well, they had also said that it would probably take 8 to 12 weeks for our stuff to reach us. And that was fine. Now, one thing I should mention before we go any further is that nobody said a word about containers. The word container never came up in any conversation. So when I went out and looked for quotes, I didn't say anything about buying a container. I often see posts on forums on Facebook and elsewhere with people talking about, oh my gosh, I want to move. How do I buy a container? How do I know how much of a container I need? Do I need a half container? Do I need a quarter container? Do I need 1 container, 2 container? Did they bring a container to our house? What happens with this container? I never even asked about a container. I just asked about a move. And so the stuff was picked up. Nobody ever said a word to us about a container. But the truth is, all of the international movers move your stuff in a container. But you don't have to buy the container. You don't even have to order half of the container. You don't have to worry about any of that if you go to the right mover. So our mover picked up all of our things at our home at the end of March because we were moving during the first week of April. So they loaded them on the truck. They went to the port of Miami. Before they were shipped to us in France, the mover, the representative that I was dealing with here in New York, in the US, she called on the phone and she said, okay, we're ready to give you your final price. Because originally, remember, I just got a quote for 20 to 30 boxes. And they told us not to worry about paying anything more until they got everything to the port, wrapped it, prepared it to go on the boat, and it was getting close to when it was going to sail. So about a month after it was picked up, she contacted me and she said, okay, this is going to be your final price and we're going to send you all the documents. And what they sent was a copy of the inventory that their man had made when he picked up all of the boxes. And they sent some customs forms that I had to sign. And I needed to also scan my passport because I was being listed as the shipper. So they had taken all of the documents that a lot of people, again, that I see online, they're all chasing documents. Their mover said they have to go to the embassy and get some sort of form to fill out so that they don't get charged custom fees, and they have to put some form with their official address. We just had to give the mover the delivery address once we had it. I mean, when I called the mover to book him, at that point, we didn't have the exact address. But by the time the stuff was being loaded onto the ship, we had an exact address. So they sent us all of the forms. All we needed to do was print them out, sign them, scan them, email them back, and then I needed to make the final payment because they were getting ready to put the things on a ship, probably within a few weeks. So by this time, our stuff had been trucked from the port of Miami all the way to the port of New York. And I found that very surprising, but our assumption was that they didn't get enough orders from other, shippers, other people who were moving to France from that part of the country. And so they needed to truck our stuff up to New York, where they had been gathering shipments from other people moving from all over that part of the United States. And so basically what they were doing was combining our stuff in a container. It was all, our stuff was all shrink wrapped into one big blob. And it was put into a container. And the only time that we ever saw the word container was when it was finally loaded on a ship, and they sent us tracking that showed the name of the ship, the container number, and how many people's things were in that container. And so it said that there were 15 people's things in the container. So basically, our stuff was combined with 14 of their other clients' things in that container. So we rented our apartment about a month and a half before we moved to France. Once we got our long stay visas, because you know when you apply for a long stay visa, you have to hand in your US passport, so you can't travel. So we had gone for our in-person appointment, turned in our documents, and they took our passport at that point, so we had to wait for that to come back. And once we got that back, almost within a day or two, we decided, you know what? We've already got that apartment. We haven't seen it in person because, yes, we rented it from the US, doing walkthroughs on WhatsApp video with our agent. Anyway, we decided, let's get a plane ticket and let's get as much as we can and take the first load of stuff over to Nice. And so within that first load of stuff, we brought some carry-on bags, and one carry-on bag was all of my expensive high-end designer shoes, and it all just fit in one carry-on bag. So you realize I don't have a ton of high-end designer shoes or little booties and purses. It all fit in one carry-on bag. So the other carry-on bag was all of my finest jewelry that I didn't want the movers to move. And this way I knew if I got it to France and just locked it up here in the apartment, I could use those carry-on bags again when we actually did the move to bring other things that I wanted to have with us closely. So we got the designer shoes and the designer purses and the fancy expensive jewelry. We got that all over here a month before our actual move. So how much did the move with International Movers Network, how much did it cost us? Well, by the time we got the final bill that included the insurance, we had already given them a deposit before they even came to the house to pick up our things. We gave them a deposit to secure the date, and we had to do that about a month ahead because we were moving in April, which turns out it's a popular time for people to move. And so we locked that in ahead of time, sent the deposit, had the date, and then just before, I guess maybe a week or two before it was going to go on the ship, they contacted us and gave us the final amount. And that included the insurance. Now, the way the insurance worked on this load was you've either got to suffer a total loss or total damage, or you can't file a claim. So they didn't want to be nickeled and dimed for, a broken lamp or, a damaged book or, one thing missing or something. So the entire load had to be damaged or the entire load had to be lost. So I mean, like if the ship caught on fire or the ship sank and we suffered an entire loss, then we could claim whatever we had said that the whole shipment was worth. Now, to be very honest with you, even though in the boxes that we sent were the things, our treasures, the things that we really didn't want to spend the rest of our lives without, the truth is that God forbid, the boat sank, we'd live. Nobody died. For 62 medium-sized U-Haul boxes, the one lingerie chest, and the one giant picture. And I had them pack the picture and the lingerie chest. So everything else we packed. Now, in addition to the what we sent with the main mover, we sent 10 smallish boxes with Send My Bag. Now, the things that were in these boxes were things that we wanted to move after the fact. We hadn't initially decided we were going to use Send My Bag, but when we started packing suitcases in the week that followed, or the days that followed, the movers picking up all the rest of the stuff, we realized that we had more stuff than was going to fit in the suitcases. In addition, I had a bag of towels and sheets that I was going to donate that I couldn't get anybody to buy. And at the last minute, I decided that I was going to go through those bags and find any flat sheets, king-size flat sheets or queen-size flat sheets, and bring them along to France. Because sheets and towels are very expensive here. And I knew fitted sheets would not fit, but I figured if I bring flat sheets, then I only have to buy a couple of fitted sheets for the new beds, And I've got at least king size flat sheet will fit any size bed. And so I wanted to pack them. So they went in a box. In addition, we had some towels that we were using in the house in that last week. And I decided, you know what, I'll just bring those towels too. And so we ended up having another box with sheets, another box with towels. These were just smallish boxes, not heavy, not real heavy anyway. And then we realized we had 2 file boxes of folders, file folders, things like old tax returns that we still had to hang on to, files from when we were growing up, health files, all kinds of documentation and things that we needed to hang on to for the immediate future. So we take those boxes up, and all told it was about 10 small boxes, miscellaneous sizes, nothing. It was like stuff that we could find at the last minute. Amazon boxes that had, we found in the garage and when Jeff was finishing cleaning out the garage, anything we could find. Now those things with Send My Bag, those things cost almost $1,000 to ship here. Send My Bag in Florida uses DHL to pick up the stuff and deliver it on this end. But the good news was that it got here within 5 days, and there was a weekend in between. So including the weekend, it was about 5 days. And also in those boxes, I had one box of some kitchen stuff that I was using in our kitchen in the last days that we were at the house in Florida. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to bring these things with us because I want to have them handy pretty much immediately, or as close to immediately, when we get to France, since the rest of our stuff isn't going to be coming for a couple of months. So that's what we did. Let's talk about some other things. People have said, well, first of all, in my last video that came out last weekend, I talked about what we did for phone service. And as I mentioned, we are using Free Mobile here in France. And for $9.99 a month, because we also purchased the internet and cable from Free Mobile, for $9.99 a month, I've got service on my phone that gives me unlimited calls, text, and data here in France, and unlimited calls and texts to the United States and in the United States if I go there. I cannot get those 4-digit security codes from the credit card companies that we use in the United States. I mean, as you know, or may know by the time you get here, there aren't credit cards here in France. They don't use credit cards. They use debit cards. And so if you feel that you're going to need to keep a U.S. credit card, you're going to have the ability to receive 4-digit codes, because especially you're out of the country. And when you try to buy something here in France and the credit card company thinks you live in the United States, and I'll get into that in a second, you need to have the capability of getting those 4-digit codes. So here in France, our phones don't receive U.S. credit card or bank 4-digit security codes. So how did we deal with that? Well, the first thing that we did before we left the United States is we signed up with physicaladdress.com. Physicaladdress.com is a third-party mail company, and they happen to be located in Orlando, Florida, but they'll do it for anybody, anywhere in the country. So you get an account with them, and I think it's probably about $10 a month US. And if you pay in advance for a whole year, I think it drops down to maybe $8.99 a month. And what they do is they give you an address that looks like a street address with a box number or a suite number, or you could even put on your mail apartment number. It'll all still work out fine. So we connected with physicaladdress.com, and we bought their service, gave us an Orlando, Florida address. I then went on to every one of our credit card accounts and the US bank accounts that we were going to keep, and I put that address on the bank account. So that took care of a US address to maintain, and of course you have to remember the zip code on that US address, that third-party address you're using, because occasionally they may want you to put the zip code for your credit card into the machine when you make a purchase. So that solved that problem. And we only did it for credit cards and for bank. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I think I have a couple of subscriptions for software that I use for YouTube that they wouldn't take a France debit card information or debit card number. So I had to use my US credit card or PayPal account or something like that. So I had to maintain a US address for them too. Anyway, for anybody that just wasn't going to go along with our France address, we gave them the Orlando address. Whenever we get mail at that address, we get an email from physicaladress.com, and it says you have mail in your virtual mailbox. And so you click on the link that they send in the email, and they'll show you a photograph of the envelope that they have received. Now, sometimes you can tell by looking on the outside of the envelope if it's something you care about or don't care about. And because it's coming from the credit card company and the bank, and I pay all of our bills online and we do all of our banking online, the only thing that we would really be receiving from the banks or credit card companies are brand new credit cards. So typically I would, there's an option to click on scan. And so you click that, and then it goes back and tells them that we want them to open the envelope and scan the contents. And then they send you another email that you click on to see what was in the envelope. And then once you look at it, you have another option. Do you want them to shred it, or do you want them to forward? So 90% of what they receive for us, I just tell them to shred, because mostly it's just some advertisement from a credit card company or from a bank. And we don't need that. What they will do is they will batch mail things as well. So if you have a number of things that you receive there, and you want to wait until you've got, half a dozen of them before you have them forwarded, because there is a fee. They'll put it in a FedEx envelope for you and send it to you. So there is a fee. And what I typically do is if I'm expecting numerous things, I'll wait until they all arrive, and then I will click on forward. So I'll just let the stuff sit in the mailbox in limbo. And I think they told me that it could sit there for up to a year before they'll start asking you, like, well, what are you going to do about this? You haven't even opened it or whatever. Now we move up to what we did about the 4-digit codes. So you have that address, but the credit card companies and the bank, they want a phone number that they can send those codes to. Our France phone number wasn't going to work. So I went to a company called Tello, Tello.com. Now, by the time I did this, we were already living in France. And we had already tried Mint Mobile, and Mint Mobile's, for some reason, I could never get codes through Mint Mobile. And I had been on the phone with them countless times. I just wasn't receiving codes, and it became a waste of money to even keep the Mint Mobile. So we dumped Mint Mobile. So we were already living here, and now we still had to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to get these 4-digit codes? So I went to Tello.com. First, I did this on my laptop. You have to do it on your laptop. We have a VPN, which is a virtual private network that you can purchase, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I clicked onto my VPN and I selected Miami, and that means that it will make it look like my computer is located in Miami. So I went to Tello.com, pretending that I was in Florida, but you don't have to be in Florida, you can be in any state. And I enrolled or applied to have a tello.com number for both Jeff and I. So we got 2 numbers. Each one of those lines is a virtual telephone line, and they cost $6 US per month. And what they do is they send you a SIM card, or if you have the capability to use an eSIM, where you don't need the physical SIM card, they'll give you that service immediately. In our case at that time, we had a slot on our phone that we were originally having the Mint Mobile SIM card in. We pulled the Mint Mobile SIM card out. And so we had room for the Tello SIM card. And so they assign you a US telephone number. And then they mail you the card, or they mail you the SIM card. So of course, we needed to use our US address, the one that we bought over at physicaladress.com. So we used our Orlando address to open the account with Tello, and they sent both of our SIM cards to our Orlando address. And of course, when they arrived at physicaladress.com, we got the email that we had mailed, and when I could tell by the envelope what it was. And so there were 2 envelopes, one for Jeff, one for I. We asked physicaladress.com to forward them, so they put them both in the same FedEx envelope and mailed them to us, and there was a fee for it, and it's nowhere near what it would cost if you tried to mail a FedEx envelope by yourself from the United States. I want to say it was maybe $20 or $30 US to mail the envelope to us, and we had it in like 2 or 3 days. So that's how we took care of that. Now, when you get the Tello SIM card or the eSIM, you can activate it from here in France. That was fine. I didn't need to get on a VPN. So we put the SIM cards in our phone, and then you had to download the Tello app on your phone, and then you go into the app, open your account, and click on activate, and you activate that phone number. And now instantly you have a way to get texts from the United States. Now the $6 a month plan with Tello, it doesn't give you a whole lot of data. I'm not even sure there is a lot of data. I mean, you could probably burn through the data in a day or 2, I guess. I never use that Tello line for anything except to receive 4-digit codes from credit cards and banks. And the way I will use it is, it's in my phone. I keep that SIM card off. It's not on all the time. When I am going to contact the bank on my laptop or on the phone, I go to my cell phone and I flip that eSIM card or the SIM card for Tello. I flip it to on, because I know that the website is going to say, we'd like to send you a 4-digit code to make sure it's you. The phone numbers that Tello gave us, I had also added to our credit card accounts. So the credit card and bank accounts have that number as our phone number. So you have to make sure once you get your Tello number and get it activated, you have to make sure that you then go into all of your credit card accounts and bank accounts and change the phone number to that phone number. And they will probably ask you to send security codes to that number to confirm the number really works. So I turn on the SIM card. They send the 4-digit code. I pop those codes into the little boxes, and I'm good to go. We have never had a problem receiving 4-digit codes since we got the Tello number. Now, some of you will say, well, can I keep my current US number on Tello? You can get it, but initially when you open the Tello account, they will assign you a phone number. And if you want to use your number that you've had forever and ever, as long as that number is still available, Tello will then change the number they assign to you. They'll change it to your original US number. Now, by the time we opened our Tello accounts, my number was already reassigned because I had dumped it months before. So I didn't care. And all of our friends and family, well, they contact us through WhatsApp. So we didn't really need to keep our old US numbers because we had trained everybody in the US to just get us on WhatsApp because it's free. So the only thing we were using tello.com for were those 4-digit codes. And to give a phone number to our US banks and credit card companies so they had a US number on file for us. So that's how we took care of that situation. Okay, next. People are always amazed when we say that we watch television from the US. How do you do that? What do you mean? Well, if you opt for the cable company through free anyway, the basic cable that we purchased, it has lots and lots of programs, lots and lots of channels, but I don't think there is one, there may be one, that is broadcast in English. And I have not found any of the French channels that have the capability of giving you English subtitles. And for some reason, even the brand new televisions that we bought here in France, it gives you the capability to turn subtitles on, but English is not an option, which amazes me because there's so many Americans living here in Nice and in France in general. But anyway, so be it. So if you want to watch things with subtitles, you have to be watching through a channel that will give you subtitles. For example, when we log on to our Netflix account through the cable, and the icon is on our television, we just click on Netflix, and we log into our US account. And, with Netflix, there's always the ability to turn on the subtitles if we're watching something that's in a foreign language and want to watch it in English. And the same thing with Amazon Prime. For most things that we watch on Amazon Prime, they're American movies, and you can turn on subtitles. Jeff is hearing impaired, and so even though he has hearing aids, he likes to have the subtitles on, even when they're speaking English, in case he's not hearing correctly or misses something somebody says. So we generally always have subtitles on when we watch television. We have the basic cable that we get through free. We did not opt to subscribe to HBO or Max or Disney or Peacock. We didn't opt to subscribe to any of those things. They all cost money. Instead, what we did is we brought our Amazon Fire Stick. And the Fire Stick, it just comes with a cable that you plug into the back of your television set. You plug into one of the USB ports. And then some of the Fire Sticks have a further cable that you plug into an outlet. And that makes it work. And then you turn on your television. Now, a problem that we and many people have is that back in the US, when you turned your Fire Stick on, you just went over, it was an app on your television, you clicked on it, and that was it, and it worked, and no problem. Here in France, it seems to require an additional step to make it work. When we first got here, we couldn't get it to work on any television, and it frustrated the heck out of me. And so I finally figured out that what you have to do in order to watch television or anything through your Amazon Fire Stick is first you have to go and unplug your television, the actual television plug from the outlet. I don't have to turn off the internet, but I unplug the TV plug. I let it sit for about 20 seconds, just enough time to go get yourself another drink of club soda or a glass of wine or coffee or even a dish of ice cream. So then I come back in and I plug the TV in, and I take our television remote, and there is a button on there that says sources. And I know what USB port I plugged the Amazon Fire Stick into. And so when I click on sources, it gives me a list of TV. Fire Stick will actually appear there. And I click with this button on my remote, I click on Fire Stick, and that brings me to the Fire Stick. Then I've got a Fire Stick remote. And I simply start operating the television with the Fire Stick remote. And what I have done on that Fire Stick remote, and I did this years ago, was I loaded a VPN on the Fire Stick. And that's very important if you're thinking about finding a way to watch television from the US while you're here in France. You need a VPN. So a VPN, virtual private network, what it allows you to do is hide where you are watching television from. So, for example, we signed up for Surfshark. Prior to Surfshark, I was using IPVanish, and both of them are great. The only reason we switched from years of using IPVanish was Surfshark had a better price deal. And quite frankly, after I dumped IPVanish and moved to Surfshark, IPVanish gave me an even better deal, but it was too late. I'd already paid for a year or two in advance with Surfshark. So what you do with the Fire Stick, there is an ability to load apps on your Fire Stick. And there are directions all over the internet on how to side load these apps. And I will list below a website that I go to, and I actually subscribe to this guy's emails. And on his website, he gives you all kinds of instructions on how to stream things on the Fire Stick, what apps will work on a Fire Stick, so that you can stream programs from anywhere in the world. The first thing I did was I loaded Surfshark, our VPN, on the Fire Stick, and I turned Surfshark on. I just click on it to open it up. And then it gives you the option to select all kinds of countries all over the world. And if you click on one of them, it masks your IP address and makes it look like you're somewhere else. So by default, our Surfshark, because we're located here in France, by default, it automatically defaults to Paris or Bordeaux, wherever it sees that there's a real strong internet symbol. And I have to go and turn that off, because after all, I want to watch television shows or movies from the US. So I turn that off, and I've selected either Miami or Boston, or you can select anywhere in the US. There are all kinds of cities. You just type in a search, and when you find a city you like, if you want to continue using that city forever, there's a little way to star it to make it a favorite. And then when you turn your VPN on, you just hunt for that city, click on that, and then it immediately transfers your IP address to make it look like you're sitting in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, wherever it is you want to be in the United States. Now, once you have that VPN on, I back out of the VPN. I don't turn it off. When you back out, it stays on in the background. And then I go to another app, and the app is called Syncler, Syncler. And if you go to the other website that I told you I will list down below, you'll find directions on how to load Syncler onto your Fire Stick. And then I go to Syncler, and Syncler itself is free, but in order to actually get streams from the US, you need to do a few things. You need to sign up for Syncler Plus, which is a paid subscription, but it is like dirt cheap. I think I paid 8 or 10 euros for like 10 months total. And then I had to sign up for something called Premiumize. And Premiumize, also a subscription service, also dirt cheap. And I think I signed up for that for like a year. And it's like, I think it was under 20 euros total for those two subscriptions. And then you link your Syncler account with those two subscriptions. And then you just go onto Syncler and you do a search for just about any TV show you can think of in the US. I mean, but some of our guilty pleasures are The Real Housewives of New York, New Jersey, Dubai, The Real Housewives of, gosh, I can't even watch Real Housewives of Sydney, Australia. Let's see what else. Married at First Sight. Name any TV show. I mean, most recently we were watching the TV show The Pit. Things that you can probably find the next day. So pretty much anything you want. Now, not everything is available because some things are just not available by stream. Basically, it's given us the ability to watch most every TV show that's on the major television channels that we used to watch in the US, with some exceptions. I mean, there are some things that you're just not going to find, and the only way to get them is to subscribe to HBO or Max. But for the most part, we're just watching things that are on the major television networks in the US. And we don't spend a ton of time watching television, but when we do miss our US TV shows. So anyway, so that's how we get to US TV shows and movies. And there are other software programs out there. One is Kodi, Kodi, and all kinds of other softwares that you can upload. Some will actually give you access to live television. I think it's called IPTV. I haven't done that. Some will give you access to live sporting events. I think that may even be the IPTV. So you can dial into things. I don't know how to do any of that. The only thing I know how to do is get our basic television shows in the US. And as I said, if you go down below and you subscribe to the newsletter for this guy that does a website, he will teach you how to do everything. You just go into his website and look for the different kinds of softwares that he'll give you links to, and I click on it and he'll either give you a link to his YouTube video on it or literally step-by-step videos. And it has taken me years to learn how to do all of these things, and I learned it all back when we were in the United States. So when we came here to France, for the most part, our Fire Stick was loaded with the software that we needed, and we just had to plug it in and connect. So hopefully I've answered at least one question you've had. And if you can think of other questions, list them in the comments below, and at some point in the near future, we'll do another video and answer those questions too. But these are probably the most commonly asked questions that we get from people who write to us, from people that we meet here in France, from our friends who are just starting their new lives in France. And so anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you're not a subscriber, why not? I know there are thousands and thousands and thousands of you out there that are watching our video. We can tell by the number of views the videos get over time. Doesn't cost anything to subscribe. Yes, we do offer paid memberships that offer additional perks that the everyday subscriber will not have access to, but that's okay. You don't have to be a paid member to watch our channel for free. We love free subscribers too. So please give us a thumbs up below and subscribe below and click the little bell that you see there and subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss a future video. So thank you again for watching, and we will see you again next time. Bye for now.
just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving